Around the Ozarks is now on your FM radio. Listen to Around the Ozarks mornings with Grace Gooley as I spotlight local people, stories, and podcasts, all while playing the country legends of the 90s and the hit makers of the 2000s. It's on the Ozarks Best Country, 105.1 The Bull.
Hi, this is Joy Robertson. As many of you know, I love food. I love finding new restaurants. I love trying new dishes. And most of all, I love talking to the many great restaurateurs and entrepreneurs we have here in the Ozarks and beyond. I love hearing their stories, and that's what this podcast is all about, learning more about them and their journey. So join me as we savor the Ozarks. This episode is brought to you by Jim's Steakhouse and Pub, Kitchenland USA, and Springfield's locally owned Fazoli's. I'm sitting at the corner of South Avenue and McDaniel in downtown Springfield, and I'm sitting across from a legend here in the 417. You chuckle, but it's true. Nick Russo. I have never started a podcast by wanting to just hand the mic to the person I'm with and just let them run, just let them go. But I'm going to stop talking and let Nick Russo start talking, because you have quite the history, not only in Springfield, Missouri, but you came here from New Jersey. So let's start with first things first, Nick. How does a Jersey boy wind up in the 417? Give me a little backstory.
Well, the backstory is that as of December 1964, I had been rejected from nearly 30 colleges. So my choices not only were limited, they were non-existent from an academic perspective. A neighborhood friend, Eugene Lepresti, Gene was home for the Christmas holidays, and I encountered Gene, and I asked, Gene, what are you doing home? I thought you were in the Trappist Monastery in Ava, Missouri. And Gene said, Nick, I was, but it didn't work out for me. So I'm currently attending Southwest Missouri State College, and I'm going to go back, take my final exams, then transfer to St. Joseph in Philadelphia. And within the conversation I shared with Gene, I got to find a college that'll accept me, or else I'm going into the military, which is what my father wants me to do. My mother would like me to further my education. Gene promised to go back to Springfield, and when he returned, send me a hard copy application to Southwest Missouri State College. Gene did that, and he prefaced before he had sent me that application. He said, "They'll accept anyone." And now, I didn't say that. That was not a school mantra. That was Gene's impression. Nick, they'll take you. Had Gene Lepresti never sent me that application, who knows the direction that my life would have taken, but I wouldn't be sitting here with you telling that story. I got accepted. And when word spread around Holy Spirit High School that Nick Russo had been accepted to a college, Harry Formica, Billy Mancini, and Billy Payne all applied, and they all got accepted. So 4 of us came here in 1965. The other 3 left quickly. My intent was get my grades up and then go back east. I didn't get my grades up. I stayed, and, that was the Lord's way of saying to me, Nick, this is where you belong. This is not only your present, but this is your future. I've only been gone from Springfield since 65 for 1 year when I attended graduate school in Texas.
Aren't you from around the Atlantic City area? Is that right?
Not only am I from around the Atlantic City, I'm from Atlantic City. Yeah, I'm from the Ducktown area, which is the Italian section, where English was not the first language of many of the people in my neighborhood. And I just recently was bemoaning to a priest who has corresponded with me recently through social media, that some of my misgivings are that in the 1960s, the belief was a second language was a liability rather than an asset. We know differently now. And I wish that, my parents, my mother in particular, both of my parents only had a second grade education. So my mother in particular was a huge believer that I needed to further my education. When I got to third grade, I had already exceeded neighborhood expectations. And then Nick Russo graduated from grade school. Nick Russo graduated or was graduated from Holy Spirit High School. And then I found a college that would accept me. So unfortunately, as much as I embrace the Italian culture, I don't have the discipline that it takes to do some of the things I would really love to do, which is to be able to speak Italian, play the saxophone, swim, sail, be part of a rock and roll band. The Lord knew what He was doing with me, but those early years, those first 17 years of growing exclusively in Atlantic City, 4 blocks from the Atlantic Ocean, a couple of blocks from the Absecon Bay. My summer routine was the same. My father would holler at me each morning, "Nicky, where do you think you're going to go looking like that?" "Dad, I'm going to the beach." Cut-off shorts, a tube of Band of Soleil suntan lotion, a transistor radio, and the Atlantic City Press sports section. All a guy needs, and it was a golden age in America.
Man, that sounds like paradise to me, really. Beach, music, you got the coast, the breeze. Did your family say you're going where to college?
No, and I wouldn't have been able to have answered the question because I didn't know where I was going. I knew that I was going someplace in the Midwest. I knew I was going to college. I knew I was going to have freedoms that I had never had before. And probably if somebody had asked me, "Nick, do you think that you're going to abuse those freedoms?" I would have said absolutely. I think I knew myself good enough to know that I was not going to be as academic-minded as what I should have been. I think, Joy, as I look back and now that I have 4 children, I really have my misgivings about, I never thought how my parents felt when their only child got on a bus in Philadelphia and was going to Springfield, Missouri. I think they always believed, as I believed, that it would be temporary. I'd get my grades up, I would come back east, and I would have all the stories to tell about my short-term existence in the Midwest. Didn't work out that way. And in a large part, it's the reason why I wrote that collection of experiences. When my youngest son asked me a couple of years ago, "Dad, where in Springfield did you have your 50-year class reunion?" "Michael, why would I have my 50-year class reunion in Springfield, Missouri when I graduated high school in Atlantic City, New Jersey?" And you find out how little your children know about your life. And how little I knew about my parents. I only met my maternal grandmother. Never met either of my father's parents. And although my mother's father was alive when I was born, I have no recollection of him. So I thought if I put this collection together, that when my children want to find out who or what their father was like, or my grandchildren, there it is. It's there in print. And it's it's the way of young people's interests or lack of. I've tried to catch up with people back east that may have known my father's parents but no luck. When you wait as long as I did to ask questions, there aren't many people out there that can answer those questions. So I have to wait.
Yeah, maybe I have to wait a little bit, but the book is called Something from a Boardwalk Philosopher, and it includes prayers from a boardwalk philosopher. Reflections from the Beach, the Boardwalk, and the Neighborhood by Nick Russo. It's full of stories. It's full of photos. What a great gift you left to your family, your children, your grandchildren. I think you should probably send a copy of this if you haven't already. I think I heard an interview with you where you sent one maybe to the current principal of your high school or something like that. So I love that you did that. Did your parents ever come visit Springfield?
My mother did. My father never did. My father didn't embrace traveling. Leaving the neighborhood, was a long journey for him. My mother would go to Italy with a medical group. Now, she was a beautician, but her best friend, Mary DeNicola Antonio's brother, was a doctor, and they would go every couple of years. And my mother would always invite me, and stupid me, I wanted to, just hang around the neighborhood. She always went during the summer, and my affection for the beach then, and I still have that very same affection, for the beach life.
What did you study at I want to say Missouri State. And you know what, Nick? I never thought I would get used to saying Missouri State because you always want to say SMS. Now it's MSU. What did you study when you came here?
My focus was always studying life. My focus then, and I preach this to my students, if they're listening and understanding, and they may be a bit too young to understand this, the greatest education they're going to get is not going to be in Nick Russo's room 206. It's going to be the education that they get and the education that we get outside the classroom from our own diverse experiences. Inside the classroom, I always thought that I would be an English major. I liked writing, so journalism was something that appealed to me, but it was the creative side of journalism. A friend of mine who passed a few years ago, Phil Giuliano, Phil said he was the first one to have ever recognized my creativity. I think my parents viewed it otherwise. I wrote stories and made these tapes on I think it was called The Voice of Music, was a Christmas present that I had gotten from Santa Claus. And so I would tape these shows, The Great Garwood Mills Robbery, The Phantom of the Inlet, and I would also create fictional stories. And at that time, I guess the Atlantic City Press wasn't as adamant about checking sources. So I would call in athletic stories of athletic events that were non-existent, and they would appear in the Atlantic City Press. And, of course, I think that enhanced high school patronage, that they probably had more Holy Spirit high school readers because the student population wanted to see what a false football or basketball or baseball story did Nick Russo send in to the newspaper. You would just call them, and it was like I was a stringer, a journalist. So I always had an affection for storytelling. the Jersey Devil. I don't know if I'm not talking about the National Hockey League team, but the Jersey Devil that allegedly lived in Pomona, New Jersey, and that story that they even did an X-Files on the Jersey Devil, and so I took those stories and embellished them a little bit. No, I embellished them a lot.
So it's not, I'm starting to see how maybe getting into a college was a little bit of a challenge for you. You were sort of all over the map, highly creative as a writer, and you mentioned teaching. And for our audience who wants to hear about food, we are going to talk about food, really good food in a minute. But just so people will understand, you have been an educator, a teacher at Springfield Catholic High School for years. How many years?
This is my 28th year now. I did teach at Parkview Central High School and Fordland High School, and I was invited on a number of occasions to be a guest speaker at Missouri State University and at Drury University. Joy, I've got to go back and make mention of this when you talk about my education, my embellishments, and things of that sort. That there's a reason why I got rejected from as many colleges as I did. My senior year in high school, December 1964, we had our senior high school dinner dance. Me and my pals, we did great during the dinner. The dance created a bit of an issue. It was the first and only time I ever drank liquor, gin and Pepsi-Cola. And it may be the reason why I don't drink liquor or soda. My buddies went into the dance. I sat in Harry Formica's car, and when the song by the Hullabaloos came on, I'm Gonna Love You Too, it was a remake of a Buddy Holly song. I thought this is time for Nick Russo to showcase his Michael Jackson, Fred Astaire dance moves. I went into the dance, which was a record hop, fashionable then, and proved that white men can jump. I tore mistletoe off the ceiling of the school cafeteria and kissed Kathy Mannering, the only kiss I ever got in high school. And Father John Halley came to me and said, Nick, I think it's time you go home. And I said, Father, why would I want to go home? I'm having the time of my life. And along with my 5 other buddies, we got suspended for 6 weeks. No makeup work. The penalty was couldn't go through the graduation ceremony. No recommendations to Catholic colleges, and couldn't go to the junior senior prom. And when Father Van Hartleven said that, I smiled. He said, why do you think that's so funny? And stupid me, I said, well, Father, I wouldn't be going to the junior senior prom anybody who would go out with me.
My goodness, what a 6 weeks. Man, they were tough. That was a deal. Wow.
Yeah, well, it was, it was the way faith-based education was then. I learned my lesson.
You are very strong in your faith, which is probably what led you to Catholic high school. But you talk about where the Lord has led you, and you talk scripture, and you're very grounded in that. You're very strong in your faith, aren't you?
Well, I would hope somebody would say that. I need all the endorsements, spiritual endorsements I can get. When the first 2 editions of Something from a Boardwalk Philosopher did not include the prayers. I had received a note from a graduating student of mine, and she had said, what I'm going to miss most in your class is the prayers that you offer before the start of each class. And so that led me to think, I need to take, it's not the traditional Our Father, Hail Mary, it's the Whitney Houston, the greatest love. How I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. And that's my prayer, embrace your God-given uniqueness. So it's not, if you read the book, and it's available at the MSU Library, the Springfield Catholic, the Springfield Public Library. Don't expect Hail Marys, Our Fathers, Glory Bees. It's my vision of my prayer life, and they're my stories. If someone can connect with them, if it helps someone on their faith journey, then that's good stuff. I really do believe that at age 78 to still be employable, and when friends of mine say, when are you going to retire? What would I do? I'm not going to come here and work with my wife. I would be an enormous disappointment to her. When I tried to help her out here, I find out I just I get in the way. So I don't think it's by accident that the Lord's keeping me around. I don't see any billboards saying that somebody's looking for a 78-year-old South Jersey Italian to employ them. So, I better keep praying to the Lord that Jeannie Scahan and the bishop and whomever else that controls my educational destiny continues to give me contracts, and I do have one for next year. So, and it's been signed. I sign them quickly.
I would. Good move. It never hurts to sort of get that little insurance policy. You mentioned music, and hugely important to you.
Yeah, it is.
You mentioned sports, hugely important to you. You still coach, but I want to talk about food. I want to talk about the first restaurant. You worked at a restaurant, I believe, when you were in Jersey, but you opened a restaurant here. How did that come about?
I've always had an affection for the industry because it's not about, and my life never has been about, bottom line finances. Now, I know that's easy to say when your businesses are being successful and they're paying the bills, and you have the opportunity to keep them viable. The first restaurant I worked at was at my uncle, Vince DiGiacinto's Rex Sub Shop in Atlantic City. I was going into 8th grade, and I was delivering sandwiches in Atlantic City on a bicycle, and I would hide the bicycle and walk the sandwiches down to what was Southwestern Bell, because there were a lot of cute high school girls that worked there, and I thought that I had a better chance of being noticed if I got off the bike and gave the impression of being a little older than that. I later got a job in Margate, New Jersey, outside of Atlantic City, with a gal who is my patron saint of the restaurant business, Claire Sapinar. And Claire was the most patient person I ever met. I wasn't very good at doing what Claire wanted me to do. And I think I tell this story in the book that Claire, it would get very busy at Dino's. It was a very popular sub shop. And when it would get busy, she'd say, "Nikki, go back by the pizza ovens." And I'd say, "Claire, we don't sell pizzas at lunch." And Claire'd say, "I know that." Then there was...
Just get out of the way?
That was it. Yeah. Then there was a time a couple of nuns came in, and when they came to the cash register to pay for their meals, I said, "Oh no, sisters, I couldn't take your money." Because I saw when the nuns would get on the bus, the bus driver will put his hand over the place where you'd put the money in. So I thought that was the proper thing to do. And Claire said to me, "Nikki, what the heck did I just see you do?" And I said, "Claire, I didn't charge those nuns. Would you charge them?" She said, "Absolutely." I said, "What kind of a Catholic are you?" She said, "I'm not Catholic, you dumb," fill in the blanks. So I went home and I said to my mother and father, I got in trouble at work today with Claire because I gave away a couple of sandwiches to a couple of nuns. And when I said to Claire, "What kind of a Catholic are you?" She said to me, "Nikki, I'm not Catholic." And I said to my father, "How could she be Claire Sapinar? What kind of an Italian is not a Catholic?" And my mother and my father quoted Claire again, reiterated what she had said. "Nikki, you dumb, you know what? She's Jewish, she's not Catholic. Her husband, Pat, is Catholic." So, I got my education on marriages that were not totally of the same faith life.
Live and learn.
Yeah,
and you learned from Claire
I did.
and your experiences delivering on the bike and what have you. What was your first restaurant in Springfield?
It was the Iron Horse. I was working as a state live-in rehabilitations counselor. I had left graduate school in Texas, West Texas State University in Canyon, Texas. Wasn't a place that was made for me. When I got off the airplane in Amarillo, a friend of mine's friend picked me up at the airport, and I had long hair and bell-bottom pants. This was 1971, I think. And Billy Poindexter said to me, "Are you Nick Russo?" I said, "I am." "Are you the guy that's picking me up in Amarillo to take me to Canyon?" He said, "I want to give you a piece of advice. Get back on that plane and go back where you came from. This part of the world is not ready for you yet." I mean, what did my body language and my dress say to Billy Poindexter? Well, I didn't listen to that advice, but I did learn from my experiences that that really wasn't where I belonged. I stayed there for, I was about 8 weeks away from finishing my master's degree, and I bought a 61 Renault Dauphine for $125. I only had 100. I still owed a guy 25, but I'm not going back to West Texas to pay him. And it was a stick shift, and a friend of mine from Boston that was going to school there taught me how to drive stick shift. Every day I would drive the car a little closer to the highway. And one day I put my nitty-gritty dirt band album, my record player, and I drove back to Springfield, Missouri. I took a job working at the Division of Family Services until I got a full-time job with, I don't know if it was the state or the county, but I was a live-in counselor. So there were individuals, guys that were displaced from their home environment. They attended Parkview, and I lived there with them. And I did that for, I don't know how many months. And there was this railroad car that was owned by Sea Arch Bay. And I called the number. It was for rent. I was going to put a bookstore in there. And then a friend of mine said, "Nikki, what do you know about bookstore?" I said, "Nothing, but I'm an English major." And so he said, "You've always wanted to open a restaurant. Why don't you put a restaurant in there?" So I put a restaurant in there. I had to beg to borrow to get the $800 that it took to open the place. And then, and it was a phenomenally successful place. I don't think it was so terribly successful financially because we were all having such a good time. a fella came in one day about 4 months after I opened it, said, I'd like to buy this place. I said, well, it's not for sale. I'm having too good of a time owning it and hiring my friends to work here. And he said, I'll give you $20,000. And I said, the place is immediately for sale. So I sold it. I bought a couple of Old English sheepdogs. I bought a 3-bedroom home 5 miles out on Cherry Street from Glenstone. Went up to St. Louis, bought an MG midget. I was living large. I thought that money was gonna last forever. And joy, this is the honest truth. I had 2 Old English sheepdogs. I wanted to breed Old English sheepdogs. I loved Old English sheepdogs. I didn't know you needed a male and a female. I didn't know that the animal kingdom worked the same way as the human world did.
You missed that day in school, obviously. It's okay. Now you know.
Well, science was never my strength. That's why I became an English major.
So you did not breed the sheepdogs, but you had what kind of food did you have at your first restaurant? And it was called what again, the restaurant?
It was called the Iron Horse.
Okay, the Iron Horse. What did you serve at the Iron Horse?
We served submarine sandwiches, hamburgers, and Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. That was the only beer we served. Yeah.
What's better than that? Well, then you eventually open another one. What was that?
Well, I discovered after GMAC threatened to repossess the car, one of the sheepdogs ran away. The home that I owned, I thought was out in the wilderness, and so I rented that out. I needed a job to sustain my lifestyle of the rich and famous, the perceived rich and famous. So I applied for a job, I think it was with the Boy Scouts of America, and the gal that interviewed me said, we'd love to hire you. How soon can you get a haircut and shave? I thought, I don't think I want to work for the Boy Scouts of America. So I opened my second restaurant. It was called Pop's Malt Shop, and it was on 711 South Glenstone. And it was home of the 10-cent beers. Again, money was not fashionable for me. It was just having a place that was a gathering place for my friends. I employed a couple of football coaches from then Southwest Missouri State. So the place was obviously off limits for football players. And I remember the athletic director, a good friend of mine, Aldo Sieben, would walk in and say, Nick, what color is the soup today? He never asked, what is the soup today? He always wanted to know what color the soup was. And it was the place where my a good friend Woody P. Snow and I became acquainted. And Woody wrote. He would sit at the bar, and he would write music. And I'd say, what are you doing? Oh, I'm writing a song. I'm writing a hit. Yeah, everybody's writing a hit song. Well, he was writing a hit song. He wrote the song Rocky, and it became a international #1 song, and I think a top 10 song on the pop charts. And then Dickie Lee recorded the country version. And Woody and I became best friends. We spent a lot of time together. One of the most creative, if not the most creative, just naturally creative individuals that I had encountered. And we would lock Pop's Malt Shop up, or if there was a customer there that we thought we could trust, we would say, you're in charge of the place for the next 2-3 hours. We're taking our lawn chairs and we're going down to Lindenlohr. We would go down there and sit in the water, and then when we felt that it was time to come back and, reopen Pop's, we would. Woody's got some great Pop's malt Malt Shop stories.
I've heard a conversation, at least one between you and Woody, who is also on the same platform as me at Midwest Family. Woody, P. Snow, and Janet Lane, longtime radio personalities here in Springfield. But so you had Pop's Malt Shop, which the home of the 10-cent beer, awesome. It sounds like in a malt shop. You could get a good malt. And a burger, I'm guessing?
No.
No?
There were no malts. The malts were, I guess, the malt liquor.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, that kind of malt shop. Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember a parent saying to me after having visited the place, it was a point of curiosity. My son, my daughter, all these checks they were writing to Pop's Malt Shop. I thought, what the heck? When did they become so, have such an affection for malts? Well, they discovered otherwise, yeah.
When you're responsible for feeding a group, you want it to be simple. And, of course, you want everyone to love it. Zoli's Catering makes it easy with baked pastas, pizza, fresh salad, and our famous signature garlic breadsticks. It's a great fit for any size office lunch, meeting, family gathering, team meal, or any occasion. Find the menu and order online at fazoli's.com.
Fast, fresh, Italian, Fazoli's.
Some people check the weather. Others check our soup of the day. Hi, this is Jim with Jim's Steakhouse and Pub. Our soup of the day changes, but the comfort never does. Just check with your server, because nothing takes the edge off a cold day like whatever's simmering at Jim's.
When you walk through those legendary doors, you're gonna find there's so much to love. So do yourself a favor, dig that service and flavor. Jim's Steakhouse and Pub.
Have you heard the news? Kitchenland USA in Nixa has expanded with a new 2,000 square foot addition. Now they're fully dedicated to your kitchen and bath projects from start to finish, and it's all under one roof. Stop by the new showroom to see and touch the newest sinks, tubs, walk-in showers, faucets, lighting displays, tile, and flooring, all in one showroom.
Kitchenland USA, newly expanded kitchen and bath showroom in Nixa, where your vision is our mission.
Okay, so after the malt shop, Ebbets Field?
Yeah, then the opportunity presented itself to move into a piece of property that was closer to campus, that at that time was actually on campus. And so I moved there, and it was a bigger facility, and was there, I think, for approximately 10 years. And then, as the story goes, and there's some of the newspaper clippings, when I fought the law, and guess who won? When the government took the place through eminent domain, and you hear the expression, you never think you're going to be the guy or the gal that's going to experience it. And an acquaintance of mine was the university representative, and when Fred came in, he said, Nick, the university, I don't know how it was phrased, but I got the message, they want to buy the place. Well, again, I had the "it's not for sale" quote, and it wasn't about the money. And it wasn't about the money. How many times do you have the opportunity to do the right thing, and your choice to do the right thing, at least my belief that I was doing the right thing, is a front page news leader story. And so that was a nice opportunity.
So you fought that eminent domain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your building was where the parking garage for Juanita K. Hammond's Hall is now. So they were building the hall and they needed that space for the parking garage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the claim of whomever. That's what they wanted, and, without going into the.
But that's where it sat, right?
Yeah, it's there. I continued to just say no. we went the route of a court proceeding where I only got to say Nicholas Dominic Russo, and discovered that it was not about whether it was right or wrong, needed, not needed. It was about, do they have the ability to be able to do what it is that they want to do, whoever they are. And they had the ability to do it. I guess the best thing that came from all of that is that it was during that time that I was unemployed that I hooked up with the CEO of St. Michael's, and we've now been married for almost 30 years, a year of dating, a year of being engaged, and so it was during that time. So a lot of good came from that.
So it led you down that road, and here you are all these years later, and the woman that you married literally runs St. Michael's. Like you said, you leave that to her. You stay the heck out of her way. But what you met her? Am I correct that she worked? She was she applied for a job with you?
She applied for a job in February. It was a couple of weeks away from her would have been her 21st birthday. And I said, why do you want to apply for a job here? It's common knowledge that this place isn't going to be here at the end of the school year. And she said, because I'm not going to be here at the end of the school year either. I'm going back to Kansas City. So now, we were not involved during that particular time. It was later that summer when she had called me and invited me to come to Kansas City and visit with her. And so I went and couldn't get a hotel room because the Chiefs had an exhibition game in town. The Royals had a home game, and so there were no rooms. She said, well, you could stay at my house. So I got there, drove up to Kansas City, and my mother-in-law was the only one that was at home. Jenny was working, and my mother-in-law had no idea of what was going on, and she was trying to fix me up with one of her girlfriends. And I thought, this woman has no clue that I'm here as a, date for her daughter, that we're going to go out to dinner tonight. And I was telling her about a book I had recently read, The Bridges of Madison County, which, oh my gosh, Joy, that book made such an romantic impact on me. And I said how a friend of mine had given me the book, and the friend of mine wrote in the book that she had hoped that I would meet my Francesca. And when I mentioned that to the gal that is now my mother-in-law, she said, well, Nick, have you met her yet? And I didn't say, yeah, it's your daughter. I stayed silent, and when she offered me a beer, I said, yes, I'll have a beer with you. So, that presented a terrific opportunity. We dated for a year. We were engaged for a year, and now we've been married for near 30 years.
I love that. That's a beautiful love story. And I've heard you in other conversations mention romance. You look for the romantic in life, right? You're all about the romance, and you like that better than I don't want to say better than the logical, but would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. I teach a unit on fantasy world literature, the world of romance as opposed to the world of logic. The Little Prince is the one book that we most focus upon. There are others. The boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. And if you haven't read that one, it's terrific. But yeah, how do you grow up in a beach town in the 50s without focusing on romance? You know, we all wanted to be the Bobby Rydell, Frankie Avalon, Fabian, you know, the music, the lives. It was all so uncomplicated, and that's always stayed with me. It's never been, and when people say to me, and I think this goes back to the Ebbets Field situation, there is no price tag you could put on something that is as valuable to you as your values system. And that becomes an enormous challenge within 2026. Not that it started in 2026, but it's always presented that particular conflict for me, because I want to be a 21st century guy. I want to have my finger on the pulse of where my students are, because and I think that I'm blessed, because once upon a time I was that student, and I am that parent. So you know, I've had both roles, and I share with parents who are so focused on get the good grades, get in a good college, make a good income to be able to afford the things that you really want. How much does it cost to spend 7 days a week on the beach with a transistor radio and the sports section of the Philadelphia Daily News? If you're blessed to be living 4 blocks from the Atlantic, so yeah, it's always been then, and it remains the same. It's romance, and I have a love affair with my marriage, my children, my lifestyle, the things that I do, my job, and that creates somewhat. I don't want to say a dramatic issue, but I know that I've always been taught, and I believe there's a world better than this. But that creates a challenge for me, because this one's been so darn good. Now, next week my vision might change, but I just hold fast to how blessed I've been. And I can't answer the question why. I don't know why you have an interest in the life and not so hard times of Nick Russo, or why anybody has an interest in that. I don't. I guess I don't see myself as others see me.
You're an interesting guy, Nick Russo, though. You have been around this town. You come here from far away, and you meet somebody, you fall in love, you have children, there are grandchildren, you have employed people, you have met people, you have fed people, you've given people the time of their life, you've helped them celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and graduations, and your love for what you do and your family and the sports. You love sports, you coach, I think, and you're a runner. I think you coach cross country at Catholic, and you name your restaurant Ebbets Field, for crying out loud, which resonates with people. So you think about that. It's like you've given people that your third space in a way. You have your home, you have your work, and then you've got your place you go to really be where you want to be with your friends. I think that's what you've done.
Well, listening to you, you're telling me what I've done.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I explained it all, right?
Well, thank you. And I don't know the names of the individuals with whom you've encountered that have pointed you in my direction, but the things that I've done have been God-given opportunities. The challenges have been opportunities, and I think that it's not hard for me to do the things that I've done. It's easy. So, when I think back about what I mentioned earlier to you about having a daughter born out of wedlock a lot of years ago, that presented an enormous challenge, but it also presented one of my greatest achievements. And when people would compliment me on that, I mean, have we become such a population of insensitive individuals when just doing the right thing is heroic? I don't get that. And you could put that on my tombstone. Here lies Nick Russo. He never drank a martini, a latte, and tried to do the right thing. Now, have I always done the right? Absolutely not. That's why I go to the sacrament of reconciliation. But when you start having to compliment people for just doing what they're supposed to be doing, then I think we're becoming a bit misguided. But that's me,
Tell me about the food here at St. Michael's, which, by the way, how did it get the name St. Michael's?
That's where I attended grade school in Atlantic City, St. Michael's Grammar School. The nuns, the patient nuns and priests there, they made an incredible impression on my life.
Did you bring recipes from your Italian family with you to this restaurant?
Yeah, the recipes that I use are, my father was a terrific cook. I was asked a lot of years ago by the Springfield Business Journal during an interview. The gal asked me, Nick, what's your favorite restaurant? My favorite restaurant, 126 North George Avenue, Atlantic City, New Jersey. My home, I never went out. My mother, father, and I never went out. There was not one instance where the three of us were ever out to breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But it was a cultural thing. So I loved my father's cooking. He was a butcher, and he made the best of the best, and he brought home the best cuts of meat. And although St. Michael's, and I don't want to misrepresent the place, we're a restaurant owned by an Italian, and we are not an Italian restaurant. Our catering is all Italian, and that's where I developed the slogan, eat like an Italian, this holiday season, eat like an Italian, this graduation, whatever. Yeah. And so, those recipes are, they're my father inspired, and I love to eat. Therein lies, I bet I have an affection for exercise. But I love to eat. My wife has grown into a gal couldn't boil water when I met her, and my in-laws weren't much better, and she has grown into an incredible cook and an incredibly creative cook. So I love this industry because it provides for me a social outlet. It's a lifestyle type place, and I think that all of my businesses that I opened I don't know a whole lot about running the finances of a business. I never took any marketing classes or any economics classes. I know the basic thing is when you get a bill, you pay it. And if you don't pay it, the doors aren't going to be open much longer. And but I try and run a business that is, as I mentioned briefly, a lifestyle type business. The friendships that are most important to me beyond the Atlantic City years are friendships that have built relationships that have been built, whether it's at St. Michael's, Ebbets Field 1, Ebbets Field 2, Pop's Malt Shop, the Iron Horse. That's what those places gave me. The Beatles got it right. Money can't buy me love. So it's never been and never will be about the money.
You mentioned the Beatles. What's your favorite music?
I love all genres of music, but I've got to say that the one I don't listen to the most would be, and I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to anybody, never heard any country and western music when I was hanging out on the beaches of Atlantic City. Although I do quote often Garth Brooks. I could have missed the pain, but I would have had to have missed the dance. That you can put on my tombstone. I still listen to a lot of the music from those early years, the very uncomplicated. I mean, I don't know what Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells are talking about when they sing "I Sold My Heart to the Junk Man." I do know from personal experience what Bobby V's talking about when he sings "Staying In," because I had a lot of Saturday detentions. I even suggested to the principal that I should graduate after 3 years because of all the additional time I spent. But I stay current to current music. Music has always been something that I've had such an affection for. I think it's one of the Lord's greatest gifts. When I go out on a run, I always go with music, and after recently having seen the film Song Sung Blue, the Neil Diamond Salamade, a God of my wants, God of my needs. Wow, I wish I could have written just that simple phrase. But I love music.
I've always said that if anybody took away my music, I think I would just shrivel up and die. I mean, I couldn't deal with life without it. It's been something for me all my life. I always had the radio on, and I always appreciated different kinds of music. And you struck me in your book because you have lots of quotes from songs in here. And there are lots that you will, if you read this book, you'll understand. And then there are other ones you won't maybe readily understand, but you'll want to go and look at it, look it up and listen to it. You know what I mean? You're going to inspire people to go look further into music, I think, with this book.
Joy, there's a 1980 Seals and Crofts song called Closer to Me, and I make reference to that in the book. If you want me to get closer to you, get closer to me. Now, we think of that in terms of guy-gal relationships. Well, as I grow and when I use that verse from that song in prayer, I say, okay, guys and gals, how does this fit within the context of your prayer life? Well, you know what? If you want the Lord to get closer to you, you got to get closer to Him. How do you do it? You do it through prayer. And so I say the cars, who's going to take you home, drive. Well, again, it's a guy-gal song, but then you look at it, where's home? If you want to put it within a spiritual context, and that the aforementioned Whitney Houston song, The Greatest Love, that should be everybody's mantra. Look at yourself in the mirror every morning and say, I decided long ago never to walk in anybody's shadow. I'm going to embrace my God-given uniqueness, and I'm going to share that with people. And we're such a culture that encourages you to be somebody other than yourself. Purchase these products and your life is going to be better. Yeah, it will be better short term, but not. It's the Toy Story story. The toy, the whatever you couldn't live without, all of a sudden becomes obsolete. It has to be replaced with, the newest edition. So
that's good stuff. You said to me you wanted to record this podcast in the morning so you could go for your run. I'm assuming you run almost every day. What's going to be on your playlist today?
Well, Joy, I've become a little bit of a realist. I'm still very much of the romantic, but I realized by trying to run every day, by trying to do speed work, by trying to vary my workouts, I've come to the reality of what I can do and what I can't do. And that's a tough reality to face, that, yeah, I can still run, but I can't run the way I would like to run. It's not wanting to be the guy I used to be. It's wanting to be the best version of myself. Now, you see those cakes that are stacked up there? Well,
yeah, I couldn't help but notice those when you walk through the front door, of course.
Well, Nick Russo shared with Jenny Russo that I don't teach school today. I'm on spring break, so I'm going to be delivering those cakes to the Derby Deli. So, yeah, that will start my day. Then I'll go out, get a short 30 to 40 minute run in, and then my wife will find other things for me to do.
It's a sunny day and a chilly day. Do you need a little audio motivation to get you through the cold, or are you just used to it? I prefer the beach days than the snow days, but I'll be running with music. I never run without music. Maybe you need Beach Boys to warm you up on a day like today.
I'll have the God Only Knows. Yeah.
Oh my God, that sounds so good. All right, so the cakes you mentioned. I have bought more than one banana cake, whole banana cake. I am trying to remember if I had the banana cake here first or at the Derby Deli first. I think I had it here first. Life-changing. You don't do the cakes. You give Jenny the credit for the cakes, right?
Absolutely. I am clueless as to the recipes of the cakes. She will not share them with anyone. When I've mentioned to her, share the recipes, hire somebody to take the burden off. She makes 16 different flavors of cakes. And she makes wedding cakes, and she makes cupcakes, and she does it all out of this very small kitchen. She comes in early in the morning, but she comes in early in the morning after she's gotten her 10 or 12 mile run in, after she's done hot yoga, after she's gone to Achieving Your Best and done her arm workouts and weight training. So, she's the straw that stirs the drink here at St. Michael's. And she does get worked up when she hears people say, "Oh, Nick, I was at your restaurant." His restaurant? He's never... I'll spend a lot more time here during the summer when I'm not teaching,
Right.
because I come in, I water the plants, and then we'll put all plants on the outside. I come in and make sure they're getting their drinks, and so I still love the industry, but I wish I could tell you that I was as viable as I thought I was once upon a time. I'm not, and I know what I can't do. I think we'd have a lot of disappointed customers from a time perspective,
Were the meatballs your recipe?
Yeah, my father's.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to eat here at St. Michael's?
Meatball sub, cheesesteak sub. The hamburgers are always good. The chicken salad.
Oh, yeah. You know what I love? I've been in here before, and I don't know if you have it every day, but that roasted red pepper soup you do,
That's
stunning.
That's hers. I make soups. Yesterday I came up and made three soups, because when I'm not teaching, I've got the free time. I love making soups, and I think that you can tell that this place, that somewhere there's an older guy involved, because how many places serve split pea soup or lentil soup or Italian wedding soup, and nothing that is served here, none of those soups are frozen. So that's why it takes me forever to make them.
I'm so impressed that you come in here every now and again and make a dish. I think that's wonderful. So if you want to know what color the soup is, I guess you can still call up and get your answer. You know what I love about this place too is your salads.
Yeah.
I love your salads in the nice cool bowl. They're just wonderful. I'm a big salad person, and my hat's off to you for that. Those are fantastic.
Well, I'll ask Jenny periodically. I try not to, but it's unavoidable that while we're having dinner at home to converse about the business, what is it that sells most? And we had that conversation last night. And she, the hamburgers have always been a staple here, but the salads, a lot of salads, a lot of cake by the slices. When I need to meet friends for an affordable lunch, I'll say meet me at St. Michael's, because I can pick up the tab.
That's handy. The last time I was here, I was at this very table in front of the window with John Sellers of the History Museum, I believe Chairman Emeritus of the History Museum, and I know you're good friends with him. As a matter of fact, I think you might be going to talk to him later today on his radio shows. Am I right about that?
Yeah, again, Joy, yes, that's true. John and I visited on his show, I think it was almost a year ago, because I remember it was warmer weather. It was in the spring. And again, what do I have to share that's that's so significant? Well, it must be there's a void that needs to be filled, and I must be a viable alternative. I was asked to speak to a group in Chicago at a football banquet at North Central College in Naperville, and I said to Coach Connor, so how many no's did you get before you asked me to come? But yeah, I enjoy doing it, but I try and keep it in perspective. I like to believe I'm not ego-driven.
You're a very humble person, but you've got quite the history. And you look around this restaurant, and you have photos that sort of define your life. I mean, there's a lot of sports memorabilia in this restaurant. Sports means a lot to you. You've got photos of some of your cross-country, some of your students, this is like kind of walking through Nick's life in a way, which if you come in the restaurant, I would invite you to just take a look around and look at it. And you have to be proud of that.
Well, it's there are things that are important to me, and there's always that hope that you believe that you're able to connect with others. My friend there, Ned and Maria.
Ned Reynolds, Maria Nider. Love them from KY3. Oh, yeah.
I've taught and coached Maria's daughter, and I've taught her son. And so I've got a photo of her husband, Scott, and her daughter and her son. And I thought, I need to get a picture of Maria. She's the one that orchestrates the success of that family. Right. And then, of course, Ned and I have worked together professionally for a lot of, Ned was the professional, I was the non-professional. But we've worked together for a number of years, and Ned likes to remind me that we were talking about point spreads on our television show on Friday night and Saturday night on KY3 when it was not fashionable. And when the station had sold, because I asked Ned, why did we ever quit that? He said, Nick, you forget we were told to quit it. That we weren't, that when the station manager, new station manager came in, he said, you guys can't talk about point spreads. That's not legal gambling. Well, the culture's changed dramatically. So Ned and I, for once, were slightly ahead of the times.
Well, you've seen a lot of change over the course of your lifetime. You've seen change in that world, and you've done some radio, some television, tons of writing, the restaurant business, the stories that you can tell. It is no wonder that people want to hear your story. I could talk to you all day. And this is one of, let's see, we've gone a little bit over an hour here. So this has been a rich conversation, and I think there's so much more to talk, but I've got to wrap it up because obviously it's getting a little bit louder in here because you're ramping up for the lunch rush. But Nick Russo, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me on Savor the Ozarks, and let's do it again sometime.
Well, thank you for making me feel viable. It's always essential.
Be sure to go to AroundTheOzarks.com to sign up for our daily newsletter where you can get every episode of Savor the Ozarks, plus all our other podcasts, events, and contests straight to your inbox. And what are your favorite dishes in the 417? Do you have any restaurants you'd like me to visit? Email me at joy@AroundTheOzarks.com.